What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Speedy's Garage YouTube channel. We are getting ready to go to the drag strip tomorrow, finally, for our first outing in Go Man Go since we did the All Angles Design drag pack suspension. I'll link to that to the top if you missed it. Gonna go out tomorrow and finally get to see how, or hopefully how, it improves the 60-foot times. The weather's been a little weird this year. It rained out a couple of times. We didn't get to go. Tomorrow the weather's supposed to be great. So we're going to leave out about 9 o'clock in the morning, headed to Beach Bend Raceway in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So that's going on tomorrow, so stay tuned for those results on that AAD drag pack suspension. But today, I wanted to talk to you about a little bit of a concern. I started hearing some rumors of some things going on in the community that gave me a lot of concern, actually. I started hearing on some of the forums like hellcatforum.org, there were a couple of posts. I saw some pictures of things from Twitter and Facebook, where it seems like the EPA may be going in and cracking down on some performance shops. And I'm not trying to say, you know, let's destroy the environment. That is not at all what I would be interested in doing. However, I do think there should be some options for people who like to work on their car. And it's a street car, so mine's dual purpose. It's a weekend warrior is what I'll call it, where I can go to the drag strip and have a good time, modify it a little bit, but not make it so modified that it's a full-on sole race car as an exclusive vehicle that's just going to be used at the track. I want to be able to drive around the street and take it to the racetrack. My car has catalytic converters on it. Technically, there's nothing that would prevent it from passing emissions. As a matter of fact, I just had to have the tag renewed last, 2 months ago. I had to go pass emissions here in Tennessee. We still have to do that. It passed flying colors, no problem. But the EPA has shown up to several of these performance shops with warrants, and they've gone in and scanned computer systems, supposedly gotten some customer information. They've scanned cars that happen to be in the shop. So it's a real thing, and I found proof of that. And there's been some documents that have been published recently. I'll tell you about some of that today because it's really going to impact our hobby if we're not careful. All right, so I've got my computer here. I've pulled these documents up. I'm going to link to them in the description so you can go check them out and know that this isn't some kind of hoax or anything like that. It's something we're going to have to keep a close eye on. And if you care about the hobby of hot rodding your car, or even maybe you're a younger person that you're thinking about getting into it, you need to be focused and paying attention to this stuff. This is how some of our liberties get taken away. The firearm community goes through a lot of this all the time. The good thing about them is they have a lot of lobbyists like the NRA and other organizations that have a lot of backing, and they will go and lobby the politicians to make sure things make sense. I don't know that the hot rod community has as many lobbyists. We've got SEMA, obviously, and we've got some large aftermarket companies that make performance parts, but a lot of them now are just kind of folding the cards, for lack of a better term. I think I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to do that, but there's been a couple of exhaust system manufacturers. They've decided now they're no longer going to make headers or catless downpipes for cars that might be going to the track exclusively. They're not going to do that anymore. There's one now where a guy I know went to buy some long tube headers. They sent him an affidavit that he had to sign and put the VIN number for his car and say that it was going to be strictly used off-road before they would sell it to him. So that to me is getting a little bit silly. Again, mine's got cats on it. I have no intentions of taking them off. I know of 1,000 horsepower Hellcats that run in the 8s with standard stock exhaust systems on it, from short tube header, factory manifolds, catalytic converters, and factory exhaust, and they're running in the 8s, 1,000 horsepower. So for me, I'm going to be able to do all I need to do and more with the factory exhaust, so I have no intent of changing it. But we got to be careful that that doesn't start to get into other things, and some of the documents I'm going to point out to you, it actually are calling out some of this other stuff we're going to have to watch for. So what's interesting is the timing of these documents. The very first one was published November 23rd of 2020. Now remember, our elections were the first week in November, and there was a change in the United States. I'm not saying, I don't want to make this a political video, but it's kind of odd to me that that date is so close. And the title of the document, again, these 3 documents will be linked in the description of this video so you can read them for yourself. Memorandum, EPA tampering policy, the EPA enforcement policy on vehicle and engine tampering and aftermarket defeat devices under the Clean Air Act. That's the title, November 23rd, 2020. I made some notes. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because some of it's kind of boring stuff. But basically, the first one was published November 23rd, just about 2 weeks after the election. It does call out race cars. And it says if it was a vehicle completely built from, you know, like think like a Copo Camaro or a Drag Pack Challenger, they don't have a VIN number. They are built to be a race car from the beginning of their life. So it says that those are excluded. It also says that any, consider a car with a VIN, that's the easiest way to think of it. Any car with a VIN number that was converted to a race car solely. They use that word specifically, solely a race car. It doesn't mean going back and forth. It doesn't mean you can take the catalytic converters off and put, you know, catless downpipes on it to take it to the drag strip, and then when you're done for the day, put your catalytic converters back on it and take it back home. That's not what they're talking about here. Some of the other things that they call out that worries me a little bit, and I'm going to read this paragraph specifically because it calls out some stuff that would in fact impact just about anything you might do to a vehicle. It says all modern motor vehicles and engines and many non-road vehicles, engines and equipment are equipped with electronic control units, ECUs. That's the car's computer. ECUs are computers that process user input like throttle position, the conditions inside the engine, blah, 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 blah. Here's the important part. ECUs direct the operation of the engine and emissions control systems. OEMs, which means original equipment manufacturers, design fuel injection timing and fueling strategy generally to be a primary emission control device and program the ECU accordingly. That's very important because the next sentence, as described below, ECUs also commonly manage after-treatment systems and onboard diagnostic systems. Products that change an ECU, commonly known as a tuner, might be an illegal aftermarket defeat device, the use or installation of which might constitute illegal tampering. So the fact that they call out fuel strategy, it means that whoever wrote this was at least briefed on how part of that works. And you know, when you get into engine tuning, sometimes you're adjusting the fuel injectors, or we're putting larger fuel injectors in the car. If you're running E85 or something of that nature, more boost, you need more fuel. At the end of the day, you have to scale those injectors so that when you're out of that extra boost, it runs just like it did from the factory. So it's not creating any more pollution. But the fact that they call that out means if they start reaching into that area of the hobby, you may find companies stop offering tuning devices and tuners stop offering to tune the cars. And that has a whole domino effect. I mean, think about that. All your folks that make their living on aftermarket parts, performance shops, tuners that tune vehicles, all of that stuff, drag tires, drive shafts, axles, helmets. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. It could just evaporate. And we got to be very, very careful that we don't allow this to start to snowball and turn into a big mess. I talked to one of my buddies about it, and he kind of said, look, EPA's been after motorsports forever, people who drag race their street car. And I said, that's the point. Remember in the 1980s, I said, do you remember the best example I can give? You guys can go look it up. There was a truck produced in the 90s. 80s and 90s were really a bad time for performance cars. There was a truck produced by Chevy, and it was called a 454 SS. That thing had a 454 cubic inch, 7.4 liter V8. Well, because of all the emissions regulations, guess how much horsepower it made? 230. 230 horsepower. You're probably thinking, well, golly, it's a 7.4 liter, probably made a ton of torque. Nope, 280. So a 7.4 liter 454 Chevy V8 in the 1990s made 230 horsepower and 280 foot-pounds of torque because it was so choked down with emissions. So I hope we don't ever get back to being in that state again. So that was the first document. It came out November 23rd, 2020. The second document was an enforcement alert, also put out by the EPA. It was in December of 2020. Now this one, it's very short, again, linked in the description. It's only 5 pages long. Its purpose says this alert is intended to remind all regulated entities that installing a defeat device or tampering with a motor vehicle on or non-road equipment can be costly. So the whole premise of this document, they start showing you or telling you the companies and the people that they've gone after. And it says, in 2019, Performance Diesel Inc. agreed to resolve alleged violations of the Clean Air Act. They paid a civil penalty of $1.1 million. And they were accused of, they manufactured, sold, and installed electronic tuning software that reprogrammed a motor vehicle's electronic control module to alter engine performance and enabled the removal of filters, catalysts, and other critical emission controls. Now, one thing I have noticed in all of these documents is that they seem to be focusing in primarily on diesel-powered vehicles. The pictures in this document are obviously Photoshopped. They show a stack, and I'll put a picture of it here. They show a stack coming off of a semi, and they've obviously Photoshopped. I mean, it's a good Photoshop job, but you can tell it's Photoshopped, black smoke billowing out of it. They show a bulldozer, again, black smoke billowing out of it. So I did a little checking, and I'm like, you know, it's kind of weird that they keep really focusing on a lot of the diesel stuff. It's mentioned a bunch of times, especially in this second document. And doing some research, it looks like those guys that drive the diesel pickup trucks, and they do whatever they do to them to make them billow black smoke. And you'll see them, you know, sometimes posted on Facebook where they black smoke a guy on a bicycle or somebody taking a walk or the Prius riding next to them or whatever. The Sierra Club hired an attorney and started going after people that were doing that. You're drawing the wrong kind of attention, and it finally got the attention of enough people that it's turned into a thing, and I think that has helped some of this start to move along. So, you know, I'm not trying to tell people what to do, but if you're drawing the wrong kind of attention and it starts to pick up steam, it can start to backfire on you, and we got to kind of be careful about that kind of stuff. I mean, it kind of goes back to like the loud exhaust, right? I mean, I love a nice rumbly V8, but at least around my area, it seems like a lot of the Mustangs, they have exhaust systems on their cars that are super loud, and they like to blip them all the time, you know, when they're in parking lots and stuff, and it's obnoxious loud, you know, to put it bluntly. And eventually, if they keep doing that, the police around here will start cracking down on exhaust noise. Now, I think the Hellcat sounds great. It's got enough growl to it that it sounds powerful and like a performance car, but it's not obnoxious loud. So I see no reason to make it any louder. I'll leave that alone. But when I was younger, I did have a car, and it took me a while to get an exhaust note that I liked. It wasn't loud. It just had a nice, mellow, throaty tone to it. And so that kind of goes hand in hand. Those guys blowing that black smoke out of their trucks all the time, they've gotten the attention of the EPA. And now they're cracking down. One of the first companies that they went after was a diesel device, according to this second document. Now, that was December. So the first one was November 23rd, 2020, remember. The second one was December 2020. There was a third document put out, and this one's long. It's like 39 pages, and I'll be honest, I didn't read it all because it gets into all kinds of code annotated, you know, gets into all the legalese. It was put out January 18th, 2021. So it is titled Clean Air Act Title II Vehicle Engine Civil Penalty Policy. So this goes into all the penalties that you can get, and it comes down to what they're going to do is they're going to say, if you violate it once, I think it's $4,900, $4,900. But what they're going to do is figure out if you produced a device that has the ability to turn off some of these, you know, diesel particulate filter as an example, or you turn off the sensors that tell you if you have a catalytic converter on your car. If you can do things like that with that device, they'll go figure out how many they think you sold, and then they kind of extrapolate how many they think might have turned those sensors off, and then they multiply that times $4,800, and that's how you end up at 1.1 million. They name one that's 1.1. They may name another one that a civil penalty of 850,000. They name another one that's 2.3 million. So that kind of leads me to the next point. Follow the money. EPA, you know, they got to go earn their keep. And so now they're going after these companies, and they're hitting them with great big fines, and they're calling them a civil penalty. So they go to court, hit them with the penalty, and they have to pay it. Some of them are filing bankruptcy. That's what a couple of the companies have done, but follow the money. And I'm not saying, again, I want to make it very clear, I am not for destroying the environment at all, period. I want to protect the environment, but we have to find a compromise where we can still enjoy our hobby. Now, if I'm at the drag strip, I ought to be able to do whatever I want to the car when it is off-road. That is at the drag strip, and you know, a day at the drag strip, I can't imagine the amount of cars that go to the drag strip is going to make a dent in the environment versus the jet airplanes that fly around, you know, even private jets as an example, all of the factories. And it's not just the environment's not just a United States problem, it's a world problem. Look at China. They dump pollution into the environment, and they're like thumbing their nose at everybody. They don't care. And so until we can get the world, they need to focus on the world and the industry that are really pumping out all of these pollutants, rather than coming after the performance shop that tunes a few, you know, 100, 200 cars a year. I mean, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. And those of you that have been following the channel for a while know that I served in the armed forces. I'm a United States Marine, and I defended the liberties that we have in this country, and I feel very strongly about those. Again, I'm not gonna make this a political video, but that's why I'm looking for that compromise. These companies that I mentioned, they can go and pay for credits. So they say, hey, we're gonna pollute, you know, whatever the cubic meter is or however they measure it. We're gonna do so many of those this year. How much is it gonna cost us? And they say, yeah, it's gonna cost you, you know, $10 million. Okay, and they write a check. I don't think that's really right either, because now they're gonna come back, and what if they say, well, hey, if you wanna go and modify your car, you have to write us a check for $500. You have to pay a tax to modify your car because it might make more pollution than it did from the OEM. I'm not gonna get into that either. I mean, I don't agree with that. If I'm at the drag strip doing something with the car, let's talk about E85. You guys know I've been working on flex fuel. E85, there's several tests that have been done where they actually put a sensor in the exhaust and they sniff the exhaust. And on E85 with no catalytic converters, long tube headers, the works, it was actually cleaner than what's required to pass the gasoline test. So you start running on E85, you're running cleaner anyway. So I don't want to get into all this credit and having to pay a tax to modify my car. I'm already paying a tax buying the parts and everything else. So the RPM Act is something that's recent. I think it came out in 2019, but it seems like it's stalling. And I've seen a lot of chatter on the internet about that. Like, hey, this is what we got to get behind. Well, the RPM Act, it stands for Recognizing and Protecting Motorsports, or the recognition and protection of motorsports. The problem is it's really focusing on the race car, or the car that has a VIN number that's going to become exclusively a race car. It doesn't really help guys like us, or, you know, if you're watching this channel, probably you, that want to have a weekend warrior car where you take it to the drag strip and run it, and then you drive it around on the street the rest of the week or whatever. So I don't know that that's going to help us there. I'm hoping that there are some, I haven't read through the whole RPM Act, but I'm hoping that there's some pieces in there that will apply to us, and we can kind of take advantage of some of that too if it passes, but it hasn't passed yet. So be sure to reach out to your local, your senator and your House of Representative, let them know, hey, you know, this is a way of life. People have been modifying cars. You know, it got really popular after World War II when you know, everybody came back from World War II and they were kind of pent up. They started modifying their cars. It became a thing, and it's honestly, in my opinion, it's a part of American culture. And if we let that go, we're letting part of a very an important part of our culture go away. And we've got to be very, very careful there. Not to watch it close. It's not someone else's problem. It's our problem. The reason I think this got such a foothold in the 1980s, we didn't have the internet. We couldn't communicate like I am with you on this video. So leave me some comments below, and if you've got information to share, share it. Share this video, get the word out. That's really what we can do. Use the tools that we have available to us today to try to help this. And I'm not, again, not trying to destroy the environment, but we've got to find a compromise where we all work together. This is a very important hobby to a lot of people, and it supports a lot of families. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedy's_garage, as well as our website, www.speedysgarage.net. Hopefully, I'll see you out there.